Now we get on to the map. And I suppose this is the one thing us adjudicators talk about most often every year. It really is the one thing you must get right. The map is hugely, hugely important. The format matters. Again, ideally, we would be saying, if possible, use A4. Some groups look for A3 size mapping, but again, it really does depend. If you have a small village, there's no reason why you can't fit your map on an A4. Sometimes for the larger towns, they opt for A3. Maybe a double-sided A4 might be better. Because the one thing to bear in mind is we're there, we're not wanting to be seen, but if we decide to take out an A3 map in the middle of a small town or a village, we're going to be spotted really, really quickly. So again, we're hoping you're going to try and help us keep under the radar. Clarity is absolutely key. So hand-drawn maps are absolutely acceptable, and we've seen some wonderful hand-drawn maps, some that are absolutely works of art, as long as they're clear and accurate. One thing I recommend to some groups that I give talks to is the public grant aid. Would you consider using that grant aid to get a reusable digital map? So each year you would change the project and you would be able to overlay that in Microsoft Word or whatever software you use for your application. But that is a really, really great investment because you will have that year on year on year and it wouldn't need to be drawn each time. So it's just something to consider. Really do avoid Google Maps because Google Maps is very cluttered, particularly when you zoom in. And when you zoom out, you lose an awful lot of detail. By all means, use an Ordnance Survey map where possible if you can access it. But again, not to overstress. Hand-drawn maps are absolutely perfect, so don't be worried about that. And make sure to include the vital information. Street and road names, absolutely key, as well as key buildings. So if there's a courthouse or if there's a church, make sure to put them in because it's really, really good for us adjudicators so we can orientate ourselves in your towns and villages. I include facilities there. That's a kind of a code word. If there are public toilets, we would really appreciate it if you could put them in. Bear in mind, there's some long days out there adjudicating, so if you can indicate that on a map, that would be very much appreciated. Again, sequential numbering, start with number 1 in your streetscape and public places category and move on from there and continue that sequence throughout all the remaining categories. Again, mark them. This is more to do with the legend. If you can mark those projects as new or maintained, that's really good for us. Also, again, the legend, if you can assign them per category, sometimes this is more doable. If you have an awful lot of projects, this might be quite hard, but the key thing is just make it as easy as possible for us to find your projects because we really are eager to award points, but it can get very frustrating if you can't find your way around a town or village. But you have to bear in mind, we might be visiting your town or village for the first time. We have incredibly experienced adjudicators who may have been there a number of years ago, but always just assume that the person visiting your village or town has never been there before and work from there. A good idea might maybe to do your map up and give it to someone who's not from the area and say, would you mind using this map and see can you find your way around? And that might be a good litmus test to see if it works. Just remember, a failure to include an adequate map could affect your marks. And by saying this, it's not that we're going to deduct you for the map, but if we can't find your project, how are we able to give you the marks? So that's a key thing to bear in mind. Again, really want to afford marks to the fantastic projects that you're doing, but if we can't find them, it's really, really hard to do that. So we're just going to go into some examples of maps. And again, all of these maps were kindly supplied by community groups and are available to look at on the TidyTowns website. So for example, we have a fantastic and really visually engaging map on the left-hand side there from Ennistimon in County Clare. Excellent map, outlines a lot of the key landmarks in the area and a good legend. And I just took this off Google Maps. This would be the equivalent if they had taken it off Google Maps. As you can see, very few of the street names, a lot of the businesses, but not the landmarks. So this is why we're always encouraging people not to use Google Maps, and particularly for the larger towns and the large urban centres where it becomes really, really densely populated with information that we don't need. So please try and adhere to that. Again, another fine example here from Bray Tidy Towns. So as you can see, they've broken it down based on category, they've numbered it, they've color coded it. So a lot of really, really good information there. And it's not overly populated with unnecessary information. All the streets are there, the parking facilities are there, which is great because if we're driving to your locality, so again, a really, really good example of a map. But again, that Bray is a large town, and then you can go to Kilmurray Village, and again, very small village, but a perfectly adequate map, hand drawn. There, I would know if I was in that village, I would very, very easily not only find my way around, but also find all the projects that they had done. And the last one just to share there is Capamore. Again, a classic example, doesn't need to be digital, doesn't need to be professional, but the best people to draw your map or to help someone draw your map are the people from the locality. So this is very clearly outlined. The one change I would make to this is I would have included the legend on this map. So again, a beautiful map really clearly illustrates all the main features and the streets. It just would have been good to have the legend there. And again, look, maybe that was on the reverse of the page, but for me walking around Capamore, that would have been really, really useful. But well done to Capamore, and a huge thank you to all those groups who shared their maps.